Hello everyone, Nubkeks here. It's a cold, frosty, wintry afternoon in Ireland here as I'm recording. But hey, we're going into Torghast, into the wonderfully cozy soul forges to warm ourselves up. But yeah, in this video I'm going to give you my top 10 tips for Torghast in these first couple of weeks, and really for basically the whole of Torghast. I think just some general tips to give you a good start, to give you to help you out, especially if you're having a tough time. Let's dive straight into it. Tip number one. Okay, tip number one. This is the number one thing that you can do on most classes in this game as a solo player. If you are having a hard time, this is the number one tip that can make your run massively easier, and it's very simple. If you are able to play a tank or healer spec, play Torghast solo as a tank or healer. I know it sounds kind of crazy. You're going, wait, like playing a healer in solo content? That doesn't sound like it makes any sense. But they scale the mobs down to have much less health. They will do slightly more damage, but that's very easy to compensate for as a healer. It actually makes the runs substantially easier. I in fact did a whole video on this on the channel. If you want to go check that out, doing runs as a healer in Torghast and showing just how much easier it was. I did that on Priest, for example. Not running as Disc either, running as Holy Priest, right? Holy Priest versus Shadow Priest. Way easier as Holy Priest than it was on Shadow. Significantly easier. So if you are stuck solo and you are able to play your tank or heal spec, even just moderately well, and let's say on your DPS spec you can't quite beat layer 3 or layer 6 or layer 8 or whatever layer you're currently progressing on, try it. Just give it a go. Swap to your heal spec or your tank spec. Give it a go. I think you'll be surprised by just how much further you get and how much less stressful that it is. Tip number 2 then, if you have this opportunity, do what we're doing here in this particular video. Play in a group. I am actually going to upload over this weekend as well one of our runs here, just the VOD of our run playing in a group, so you can see how it went for us. In terms of our group setup, we did have a tank and then I was on a healer. Funny enough, actually, we're good players. We're playing reasonably well coordinated. It's not super perfect, but we're good, right? I will say that for the healing, I felt like I did have to heal for floor 1, some of floor 2. By the time we got into floors, 4, 5, and 6, though, really, and we did a couple of different runs. We did both wings of Torghast on layer 3 this week, week 2 of the expansion, but that's the top one. It didn't actually need to heal on those higher floors. I could probably have gotten away with just playing DPS, doing 1 tank and 4 DPS, and just the DPS focusing on off heals. That probably would have worked. And got through a little bit quicker, but maybe it's a little bit less safe. So that is something you could consider. 1 tank and 1 healer plus 3 DPS, you're gonna have a really smooth time. It's gonna go very well. It's again much easier than playing solo. You're gonna be able to share more powers through the vendors, which is gonna be coming to our next point. But yeah, the one thing to watch out for, there is one thing that is harder, and one thing only in a group, and that is the traps. The traps in Torghast, hi Grubby, scale up a lot when you are in a group. You'll probably get one shot by the traps unless you're stacking anima powers to increase your health or give you some damage reduction or something. You'll probably get one shot by the traps, so do be careful of the traps. It's going to be very easy. I got hit by a few of them because I just wasn't paying attention because the run was so chill, so easy, so smooth. When you get to those traps, though, very dangerous, so watch out for that. Tip number 3 is the vendor floors. What's your strategy for buying things off of the vendors? You always have a vendor on floor 3. In fact, there's only vendors on that floor, plus soul remnants, which we'll come to in a second as well. There's no enemies on floor 3. And same thing with floor 6. It also has a vendor before the final boss, so you get vendor guaranteed at floor 3 and 6. As a solo player, in my opinion, I think you should avoid buying the plundered anima cell or the ravenous anima cell. They're just a bit too expensive for what they do. They'll basically give you an anima power spawn that will give you a random power. Not a good deal, I don't think, as a solo player. Not a good deal. I really recommend that you actually, as a solo player, just buy, pick the best ones from the powers that you have there, the guaranteed powers. Pick the ones that are going to fit your needs the most for that given run. And I would also really recommend don't sleep on the defensive powers as a solo player. Don't sleep on those. The defensive powers, although they're probably not that exciting, they can actually add up to be extremely powerful. So for example, on Shadow Priest, I have a power that increases the duration of Vampiric Embrace. This is one of my defensive cooldowns. that makes the damage I deal heal me. Well, I can increase the duration of that. And if I pick up like 2 or 3 of those powers over the course of the run, I could get like a 30-second plus Vampiric Embrace very easily with just a couple of those very common powers that are very, very cheap. And that can actually make a massive difference when it comes to last boss. So don't sleep on the defensive powers, and do not buy solo the plundered anima cells, the ones that create random powers. I don't think that's worthwhile. However, in a group, definitely do. In a group, only one person needs to buy the plundered anima cell, right? So for 150 Phantasma, one person out of 5 can buy that. And then every single person in the group gets a power out of that anima power spawn, which is completely insane, right? It's completely crazy. So in a group, it's the most valuable thing. Get the person who has the most Phantasma to buy that, and then share it with the group. And make sure that you don't leave the floor before you've all spawned it, grabbed your power from spawning that in. Yeah, in a group, they are the most important thing. Solo, not so good. Tip number 4. Just a general rule for powers. Obviously, I can't tell you what the best powers are because there's 36 specs in the game. That would be a very long video. Maybe we can do more of that stuff later on. But for this video, a general rule of thumb for what to do: don't worry about powers that are going to make you stronger at clearing through the tower and dealing with just, lots of different adds AoE. So for example, Mawrats Explode. It's really cool. It's flashy. It's fun. Not a great power though. What you want to do, the hardest part of your Torghast run, 100% is going to be the final boss. The final boss in your Torghast run can be extremely challenging, right? You can find that extremely challenging, especially on specs that aren't doing all that well in Torghast. It can be a real nightmare. Also, to a certain degree, some enemies, some elite enemy packs can be very dangerous as well, like the Tower Sentinels. If you get a double Tower Sentinel pack, that can be very, very terrifying for a lot of specs in solo Torghast runs. Take powers that are going to help you with single target bosses. Things that are going to help you on the final boss. That is where you're going to get stuck. That is where most runs are going to fail if they do fail. So pick powers that help you with that. That's your rule of thumb. So go for those. Tip number 5, sort of tying into this then, is to only fight elite packs or bosses, especially solo, when you have your cooldowns, right? Wait for your cooldowns. Like, don't go pull like a Tower Elite plus, I don't know, a Lord of Chains or something together. Don't pull the two of those if you don't have your damage or your defensive cooldowns. Take that time to go and explore. Right, that's the time you go and explore. Check some of the other passageways, clear out some trash to see what's in the next room. Then come back to the elites when your cooldowns are back. Make sure you have those. Again, this is while you're progressing, right? Like when you're on farm and this stuff is super easy, just whatever, just blast through. But this is for people that are progressing, that are newer to Torghast. The elites can be extremely dangerous, especially when you don't know what they do. Having especially crowd control ready to kick things, like the Fallen Death Speaker. They're going to summon in skeletons. You want to make sure to kick that, etc. Make sure you have all those cooldowns available before you fight the elites. Otherwise, you can find yourself dying pretty quickly. So do watch out for those. Number 6, sort of tying into this as well, you can actually swap your talents at the vendors, right? And most importantly, you have a vendor on floor 6 before you fight the final boss. So you can go through, floors 1 to 5 in a bit of an AoE spec for your spec if you've got different talent choices. So, some specs you just have one talent choice for every situation, but you could easily have some talents that are great for AoE and doing bigger pulls and clearing through trash. And then you might have a completely different build for single target bosses. So if you're struggling, if you're progressing, when you get to floor 6 and to that vendor, swap your talents over to your single target build, because you're going to be fighting the boss and the boss is single target. You want to have the best build possible to fight the end boss. So you can take the opportunity to swap there. I think lots of people probably don't know that you can actually swap your talents at the vendors. Tip number 7 is the Soul Remnants. And again, this is different for solo and for group play, in my opinion. So Soul Remnants, these are the little souls you can find around the place. Some of them, you can just click on them, and they're going to give you a soul buff. You can see it in the top right there. I currently have 4 stacks in the video. Each stack that you get gives you 1% main stats. So that's intellect, strength, agility, whichever is appropriate for you. That's actually extremely strong, okay? In Shadowlands, when they did the level squish and the item level squish and all of that stuff, the rebalancing actually makes primary stats really, really good. If you're playing in BFA, for example, primary stats like intellect were nowhere near as strong as they are in Shadowlands. So that buff actually adds up an awful lot. And when you're in a group, whenever one of you frees one of these little soul guys, I think I just saw one down the corridor here that we're coming to, everyone in the group gets 1 stack of that buff. So always free them when you're in a group. You can see he's just up there on the left there. The other option that you have, I think, in fact, for this exact guy that we're looking at right now, is that you can, for some of these guys that are trapped, you can complete the ritual to take their armaments, okay? This is going to give you a stacking buff that basically gives you massive increases to your secondary stats, like haste and crit and all of that. I think stamina as well. That is, I don't think that's worthwhile in a group. You're better off just getting the small bonus for your group. But that can be extremely powerful as a solo player. It gives you a 3-minute buff. So you've got 3 minutes with that buff. But the thing is, right, if you get another one, if you find another one within 3 minutes and you choose that option again, it will then refresh the buff and stack it up. You can stack it by default up to 5 times. If you buy the first thing off of Fenari, which we'll come to in a later tip, you can stack it up to 6 times. Once you get to 4 or 5 stacks of that, you're going to be absolutely destroying things with all the haste you're going to have. So it's a really good option, but I will say that you do need to be solo so that you can keep grabbing them for yourself. It's better just to power up your group by freeing them otherwise. Yeah, you also want to be going through the floors pretty quickly. You're kind of speed running at that point, but that's a very, very viable way to do it because they are so powerful. But you want to be going through fast. You want to just be making your way through the floor as quickly as you can, not wasting time at the vendor just grabbing speed buying stuff. Make sure you get as much uptime out of that buff as you possibly can. So yeah, that's a good tip there with the Soul Remnants. For tip number 8, I think this one's probably pretty obvious, but you should always take the time to kill rare mobs. That's when the rune carver pops up and says, you're being hunted. And of course, by being hunted, he means that there's going to be a rare mob standing in a room that will not move to chase you whatsoever until you engage combat with them. They're not very good hunters, let's put it like that. They're just chilling. They're very chill. They let you come to them. It's actually very smart, actually. They just have very good loot. That's their hunting strat. They're baiting you in. But no, it is actually worth it. Do go fight them. Always fight the rares. They give really good powers. Really powerful powers. So for example, you have the Tremor Beast, like this big gigantic maw rat dog dude, for example. He's got a really notable one, this heart that he gives you, the Tremor Beast heart, that gives you 15% primary stat, which is hugely powerful, and also a heal periodically in combat, a constant heal. Another power that's really good, I can't remember the name of it now off the top of my head, but it keeps pulsing out AoE damage every few seconds. That, well, it does AoE damage, but also interrupts and stops the casts of all enemies, and that can actually, I believe, interrupt even spells that you cannot interrupt normally with kicks and things like that. So really powerful there. It gives you a ton of control and some bigger pulls with lots of casts to interrupt. Really nice if you're a spec that has a long cooldown kick or doesn't have a lot of crowd control to stop those casts in AoE. Always do those, again, with the friendly NPCs as well, the quest guys. Always help out the quest guys, the Venthyr, the little Covenant bros, your Covenant bros. Always help them out. They always give you a really powerful power. And also these quest NPCs that you help out, they can give you permanent followers for your mission table, right? And you want to get as many of those followers as possible because there's really good rewards in the mission table too, and the companions that you can get. I believe so far there's a maximum, I think, of 4 you can recruit, maybe more. There's 4 as far as I'm aware in week 2 so far. So getting more of those is really important because certain followers have certain powers that are going to help you with different types of enemies. So for example, one of my followers on one of my characters, thinks on my shaman. No, I think it's Theotar actually on my priest. For example, he's with the Venthyr. I think all of his abilities only hit the back row on the mission table. So if I'm ever fighting, if I've got a tough boss I need to take down for a mission, for example, that gives Soul Ash, which is the legendary resource we're doing Torghast Wings for, if I get a mission, which is only a big front row boss, Theotar does nothing, right? I want to get a companion that's more specialized that can deal with that front row and deal with a single target. So you want to be looking around in Torghast, make sure you do those quests in case any of those quest guys could be a companion for your mission table. Tip number 9, actually, as well, is to buy permanent upgrades for Torghast off of Fenari. You hopefully are aware of this, but it's possible that some people aren't. But Fenari, actually, by upping the rep with Fenari, you'll actually unlock more things that you can buy off of her with Stygia, which is the resource that you earn from doing quests in the Maw for Fenari. You can actually buy upgrades that are permanently going to improve your capabilities in Torghast. So, for example, at very low reps of Fenari, you can buy a power that ups the stacks of your armaments, which are the stacking buff that you get from consuming Soul Remnants by completing them and turning them into armaments. You can also buy a power that makes your first death not count against you. So that's quite a nice one as well, especially if you're going to play in groups and you're going to be trying to deal with traps. You're not very good at dealing with traps like me. then having that first death not count against your group is kind of valuable. So there's just a couple of ideas for those little buffs that you can get, but definitely make sure, as I think we wipe here, make sure that you can buy those upgrades from Venari. I think they're going to be very much worthwhile. I think for most players, certainly, saving up to we had two of the guys had to go AFK to get dinner. That's why. If you have to go, saving up to buy a socket is cool and all, but I think for most people that's not going to be as worth it as just upgrading your Torghast runs, making them faster and more efficient so you can spend more time on other things. So definitely check out Venari and the permanent upgrades you can buy. And then number 10 is just more of a very general tip. If you are going to be struggling on that last boss, you can bring consumables. Number 1, buy the consumables off the vendor. I've seen nobody that I've seen footage of from Torghast bothers to buy consumables off of Venari. You're gonna have some spare soul ash left, or phantasma, excuse me, left at the end of your run, and not Venari, the broker on the final floor, floor 6, right? Go buy some of the potions that guy sells. He can sell some healing potions and things. Use those on the last boss. They're actually not too bad. On top of that, you can also bring in potions and flasks, and you can also bring in drums from leatherworking that can give you a mini bloodlust. All those things, a combat potion, a flask that might be that little bit extra that you need to push yourself over the mark and actually beat a lair. Because, I mean, the last thing you want to do is let's say you're progressing on lair 8, hypothetically, it's your first time doing it. You don't want to get to the end of that run, like 30 minutes in, and then start dying to the boss a bunch of times. And then you fail the run, you have to redo the whole thing, then you're kind of frustrated, you throw the next one, and then suddenly you've spent like 1 hour just completely down the drain. All you had to do is, buy one drum, one combat pot from the auction house, and you probably could have taken that guy down the first time, and saved yourself an hour of frustration. So consider doing that as well. I think that's definitely going to be worthwhile. Obviously, you could, enchant your gear and all the rest if you need that extra boost. That's more of a permanent decision. The consumables are always going to be there. You could even buy something like an invisibility potion and use it to skip past a really nasty pack. Like, again, if you run into something like double sour sentinel, tower sentinel, use an invis pot to get past. It's not much gold in the long term if it's going to save you a whole bunch of time. Like, if you waste half an hour having to redo a run in Torghast, you could have made more of that gold back. You could have made much more gold just by having an extra half hour free to farm some gold. So yeah, there you go, guys. 10 tips to get you through Torghast. I hope that you have been enjoying Torghast. I think it's really cool. I'm personally really looking forward to the twisting corridors when that opens up, doing those big long runs. And for me, it's also a lot of fun to check out the different classes and the different powers. I will say for me, a little bit disappointed in Priest. I found the Priest powers were not all that interesting, but the Shaman was really cool. I really enjoyed Shaman. In particular for Shaman, one of their most fun powers was whenever you drop a totem, it drops another totem. So you could just be, I could, throw down a Cloudburst totem and it would drop a Spirit Link for free. And you're just going, well, that's pretty cool. Or, drop a Tremor totem and it drops a Windrush totem as well. Fun stuff like that. And that's what I love to see in Torghast. But yeah, hope you guys are having a great time. Thank you for watching. I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye.